All right. Hello, people. If you are people, hello. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about how I made this book. This book is called Gigs. It's I guess you could call it a graphic novel, I suppose. It's about 100 pages, and it's got a big sketchbook section in the back, which is part of what I wanted to talk about, which is I made this book in this book. So I wanted to talk a little bit about making comics in a sketchbook and maybe the advantages or disadvantages that they might have. Most of the time I make comics on separate sheets like most people do. I have a bunch of them here. So most of the time I keep these pages on separate sheets. You know, here's a ATP page. I bring these to shows just to like in case anybody's interested in getting them or whatever. But most of the time, you know, people keep their comic pages on separate pages, I guess partly to sell them, which is an advantage to keeping them separate, but also just to, you know, keep track of them and so you know what's what. Now, one of the nice things about doing it in a sketchbook is that everything is right here in order. Again, that might be a limitation if you don't like to work linearly, but my goal for this project was I wanted to sort of turn the sketchbook into a comic. So I keep a sketchbook all the time. I'm always like doodling and stuff. This sketchbook here is sort of like a journal that I did a video on earlier in the year. So I've been doing a drawing or a comic of some kind every day for this year. This will probably be a book, I'm guessing, in January of next year, but I keep a lot of sketchbooks. I've always kept a sketchbook since as long as I can remember. And then for this book, I wanted to see if I could somehow bridge the two together. For this book, I started it right before COVID, I guess 2019. I started this book, and I had like a bunch of small ideas, but instead of making an anthology, I wanted to see if I could sort of stitch all those ideas into a book. And it was a time when I started reading maybe kind of some more experimental comics, and I wanted it to be very kind of freewheeling and spontaneous. And so I thought, what if just whatever I draw in my sketchbook becomes the book, becomes the story? So I started off by just taking some notes in the back. Another nice thing about doing it in a sketchbook is you have like extra pages where you can kind of practice stuff or jot down notes. So these are just like a few notes I had for the story. This was some inking and drawing kind of stylistic practice, I guess, just trying to sort of get the tone of what I wanted to do, how I wanted it to look. I really liked how I drew this guy playing the guitar. I was drawing these characters all the time wearing these like masks that have little microphone things on them. I'm a big lightning bolt fan, and so I think a lot of the times when I draw people playing instruments, I draw like them wearing masks with stuff strapped to their face. So, you know, you can leave a few pages in the back to kind of experiment if you want, but the rest of this book is just all the pages that became this book. So I started, actually, you'll notice at the front it says Bipedalia 2, which is Gigs Part 1. And my original idea was I was going to extend these comics, which I called Bipedalia, which is like biped, you know, people on 2 feet, 2 legs, and just the things that they do. And so I did 3 of these, and each one, this is actually the second one, and each one of these is like the first time something ever happened. So this one was the first time someone made like a weapon, you know, used something to make some sort of tool that they needed. And this pregnant lady hunts down this beast that has been, you know, beating up her partner. And that's basically the story. And then in the next one, it sort of builds on that, and they start making clothing and all this stuff. So the first one, before this one, is about shaving. This guy shaves his face using one of these tools. Then this one, they build tools with it. And then the next one, they build clothes. So the idea was that these 2-legged creatures and people would kind of develop over time. So I thought it'd be interesting if I jumped way forward into the future for the second part. These 3 issues became one book, and that was Bipedalia 1. So I thought it'd be interesting to sort of jump ahead, but have them be sort of connected. So this takes place kind of I guess in like a not too distant future from now, or from 2019 when I started it, I kind of abandoned the bipedalia part, or I mean, maybe that's like an Easter egg or a secret thing or whatever. They could be related. There's nothing that says they can't be related. But that's why it says that right there. So anyway, this became Gigs, the book. And I wanted it to be kind of like slightly in the future, but still kind of about people. It's not really about battle or, you know, space aliens or whatever. I always pitch it to people as like slice of life sci-fi. And it was actually Nick's idea for me to do this episode after the most recent sci-fi episode we just did. So if you want to hear us talk more about sci-fi, that was the last episode that came out. Okay, so this was the book. This is actually the third version of this book. The first one, I think I printed about 100 copies. I sold those. And then I didn't really know what to do with it. I had moved on to ATP, which is the book that I'm working on right now. So this was sort of out of print for a little while. And then I did sort of a small run. I bet I made maybe 30 copies or 40 copies, but I was just printing on the copy machine and then binding myself with glue. But those were hugely time consuming. And so I just recently did a reprint of these. So I have these in stock again, at least for a little while as of this recording. So if you like this book, if you're interested in it, you can go buy it. I always feel icky pitching my own stuff on the show, but I mean, I make it. So if you want to go check it out, go for it. All right, so here's the book. So I got this sketchbook, and I wanted to be able to work on this on the go, because the whole idea was I wanted to sort of bridge the gap between keeping a separate sketchbook and telling a story. So my idea was like anything I do in the book becomes part of the story. So I had this idea of like, you know, exploitation and kind of gig workers. That's where the word comes from, but it's also sort of about robotics and artificial intelligence. And so gigs is sort of like gigabytes, gig workers is sort of a double entendre. And I was just thinking about exploitation and kind of like how gig workers can be treated very poorly. And the first idea I had, which was something I wrote down in another sketchbook somewhere, was I was like, what is like a humiliating, what would be like a humiliating job? And I was like, what if someone came to your house to make coffee, but like in their mouth? So basically this guy, this book starts off with like a high rise, and this guy comes over, here's like coffee grinds and just sort of like stuff. Now I started this book without pencils. I just wanted to kind of just go for it. So the first section of this is just like micron pen to paper, for better or for worse. So some of this looks a little rough to me, but I think it looks pretty cool anyway. But I wanted it to be just really like off the cuff. So this guy comes over to this rich guy's house, and the idea is that you grind up the beans in your mouth and then you pour like boiling water in your mouth. So I wanted something that would be just like something only like a horrible person would ask somebody else to do. And so this rich guy just like can't even bring himself to look at this guy. He still has like a goofy mug with a message on it, and he just floats around his house like a real rich piece of shit. So that was sort of the first idea. So I was like, I'll draw this scene of this like in this like disgusting idea I had, and you know, then he spits it out into the cup, and then it goes on from there. I'm not going to describe the entire book, but that was the first scene where I was just like, I'm just going to draw this scene because I think it's a weird idea, and then I don't know what's going to happen. And then I went to a figure drawing class downtown in Manhattan, and so I was like, oh, this will be the next part of the story. So I'm just going to cut from here to the figure drawings. Like, I don't know how this is going to tie in. At the time, I was like, should I ink over top of this? Should I cut it out, collage it? I don't know. But I got really interested in this model. I thought it was really interesting looking, and I started to imagine like what she would be doing after the modeling class. So then I thought maybe the model goes to breakfast with the coffee guy from the first scene, and suddenly the two things are connected. So here they are holding the figure drawings from the previous session. I don't know if you can see that down there, but that was like linking those two parts together. So this was a really eye-opening way to start working. I've never done this way before. I've always kind of had a plan, and I kind of go scene by scene, not always totally linearly. And I wanted to be able to draw these robots, and I thought it would be interesting just to kind of show what like an early, because we still don't have like robot waiters and stuff yet. So I wanted this to be kind of like the very beginnings of that era, when we would start being around these sort of automated things. So the waiter at the restaurant is automated, and the figure drawing model and the coffee guy are having a breakfast together, just talking about stuff. And yeah, it was nice. It was really freeing working with just pen, because there were times where I'd be like, I don't know, I feel like it's too much dialogue for one page, and I didn't want to worry about the rulers and stuff. And I also wanted to be able to travel with this really easily. So the fewer things you bring with you, like let's say you're going to a coffee shop with a sketchbook, all I needed was a pen. Like this is just a Micron pen. And then I filled in the blacks, I think, when I got home later. But I could take this book somewhere. It already has a hard surface, so you can put it down on your lap. You can draw it on something else. That's up to you. And but if you start bringing in rulers and pencils and all this other stuff, it becomes sort of unwieldy. And then I like the idea of them getting lost in this conversation. So the panels go away, but then the panels come back when the meal kind of comes to a close, and you have this beat here. And that was really fun. And so I felt like I was doing some more experimental page layouts, because sometimes I would start the page not knowing what was going to happen. So like I knew they had to leave the restaurant, so I drew this guy first. They're just floating on these weird little platform things. They're having the conversation, and like this is a page layout I don't think I would have come up with if I wasn't just drawing with the pen. If I was trying to sketch this out and plan this out, it wouldn't have looked like this. This, I think, is a rapidograph. I think I actually started switching pens around here a little bit also. So just, again, I found it very freeing to work purely in pen, just in the sketchbook. And then that scene was over, and I was like, okay, I wonder what the waiter does after the waiter's job is over. So after they leave, where does the waiter go? So you can plant kind of these like little seeds in your mind without totally knowing what's going to happen next. Like I was really just freewheeling this bit by bit. And then I thought it would be really funny if like the robots would go back to some sort of base and they get their vision scanned, whatever they recorded from their day. And in this case, they were just like looking down women's shirts the whole day, because the idea of like a really horny robot I thought was really funny. And then you get like a rating based on what your performance was for the day or whatever. And there's that robot, being downloaded, being discharged, and then the robot has like free time. So a lot of times I guess the idea is that a robot gets deactivated, it sits in a warehouse, but I thought it would be interesting if they would like go out again. Like once they're done with their shift and they download all their information, they get to go wander around the city a little bit. So this was, I think, partly observational from a corner near where I lived at the time, and the perspective is like way off. You can see I kind of fucked that up again, but I don't think anybody would really care or notice. But this was an observational background drawing that I drew the robot into. And again, that just became the sketchbook. I was like, I want to see what's going on. And then this was just a spread of like stuff I was looking at, garbage, dumpster, that I added some plants to. Like this was observational drawing from Bushwick, I think, in Brooklyn, and just drawing, people, things I've overheard. And so this, even though it's not from my imagination, it's from observation, it fits, I think, into this part of the story, because it's sort of meant to be what the robot is seeing now that the robot has leisure time. What would a robot do, or an artificial intelligence do, if they had free time to just go wander around, and what would it be like to feel that way? Then they encounter these people in this van. I don't want to show too much in case you want to read this. It goes back to the figure model and her friend, and then they go to this concert. These were observational drawings from Bushwick also that I sort of added some stuff into, but these are specific places. Maybe you recognize them, I don't know. Just adding kind of my own little details in there. So then the approach starts to shift a little bit. This is another real place. It's not a music venue, but it's a real warehouse. Now I'm leaving the left pages here blank because I was nervous that some of the ink would go through the pages. It didn't really, unless I wanted to do like a big double page spread, but I was leaving these blank intentionally. And sometimes I would write like little notes on them if I wanted to work out some dialogue or something. So at this point, I drew this page because I wanted them to go into this place, but I wasn't sure what was going to happen when they got into the venue. So I went to the Met. Actually, you know what? I may not have done that page first. I think I may have skipped a couple pages because I wasn't sure what to do. But at some point I went to the Met, and after I'm done recording this, I'll try to find some pictures of these. But I went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and I drew some statues that I saw, like I in pencil. So I sketched this guy out in pencil. I think these two were a statue, maybe this one, without any of the background stuff. And this is a pretty famous sculpture. It's like a person cradling another person. And I drew them in pencil. And then when I got home, I kind of added some stuff to them, and I thought they looked like musicians. So I turned them into this like wild concert scene by adding in all these extra details. But I thought it was fun because I wanted to go to the Met anyway. It's sort of like figure drawing, to go look at sculptures and then to turn those observational drawings into things. So like I never would have thought of this pose just on my own, but taking that observational inspiration really took me to some places I wouldn't have gone otherwise. And I loved opening up these spreads into kind of non-linear things, because when you go to a concert or you go see a bunch of bands, like your memories of things are not linear. So whenever I try to draw things that are like lots of stuff happening all at once, I want you to be able to jump around the page a little bit, because that's kind of what it feels like to think about them once it's done. This was something, I don't remember why I did this. It was just an observation, sounds of leaves on brick. It was just sort of something experimental. This is not in the book. Left that out, skipped a page. This was a statue at the Met. I know that. This might have been, I'm not sure. That might be it for observation. And then at that point, I'm like, okay, so here's the band, and she's there. The figure drawing model and her friend, the coffee guy, are at this venue. The band has like kidnapped the waiter robot to make a point about automation and gig workers and kind of human replacement. Now, this wasn't originally going to be a spread. I think I didn't draw this page at first. And this is one of the pitfalls, I guess, of working in a sketchbook, because this was blank, but I thought the jump from here to here was too jarring, and it needed like another beat. So I did it on this page. And I think that works really well in the actual flow of the story. I think that's how it appears in the book. Double check. I think that ends up being the spread. Yeah, so here's the spread for that, and it just is basically that same page, just in that way. You do get some kind of rubbing marks when you work, page on page, but I left all that stuff in because I really wanted it to feel like you're holding maybe like a document of some kind. There were a few times where I drew something with pen that I didn't like, which obviously will happen, so I would just cut out a page, or I think I tore this out of the back of the book maybe, pasted it over, and then drew on top of it. So you might be able to tell that in the final production of the book, but who cares? I mean, no one's going to very few people are going to read your book and be like, oh, look at that little mistake. Look at that ink smudge. Oh, what a disaster. What a mess. So like, I think you can actually sort of see where that paper was, but I don't know if anybody would really notice it. I don't know. If I'm reading a comic and there's signs of the artist's hand, I love it. I'm all about it. All right. So yeah, there's this concert thing, and then I thought the whole idea was that they bring the robot on stage to destroy it. That's like part of the performance of the whole thing. So I was really excited about this like double page spread. I've always really liked, this might be like appropriation or something, I don't know. No one's ever said anything negative about it to me, but I've always liked the way sound effects look in manga. Like they just look like sound in a way that kind of onomatopoetic words in English don't look like sound to me. They just look like words. So adding these just like glyphs in the background, they don't mean anything, but they're just meant to look like a loud sound of that guitar like smashing into that robot. And then chaos breaks out. So again, non-linear stuff here. And then a view from the robot right before it gets destroyed. And then cuts to this guy. So let's see. Again, I don't want to show this whole thing, but I'm trying to find where I wrote down some notes on the left page somewhere. Oh yeah, here we go. So from time to time I would leave this open, like there might be a long bit of dialogue or some sort of joke I'm trying to get across. And so by leaving this left page open, you can scratch off some details and scratch off some ideas over there. So it's like having a sketchbook or a notepad right next to you when you can work out the page on the right. Another thing I should mention, another tricky thing about working this way is obviously when you read comics, these pages are side by side. So let's see, in this case, is that page on the right or left? Yeah, so like here's this page on the right, but it's tough to tell what the left is actually going to look like until the book prints. So here's this page, which is actually on the left of that page, what can be a little confusing, I guess. I think it worked out all right in the print version. I was really happy with how the whole thing turned out. You have to kind of time it so that if you do have spreads, I may have actually had to add a couple pages to make sure the spreads show up in the right place, but you have to kind of pay attention about what number each page is So I wrote down in pencil just on the corner, like odd numbers are always on the right, even numbers are always on the left. So you can sort of keep track of it that way. Yeah, again, I don't want to go through the whole story, but here's another little bit. So like I think when I got to this point, I was like, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. And maybe I had to go to bed or I had to go do something else. So I could write down like, what do I want to do next? I'll just jot down a couple little ideas here. She has, this was another idea. I wrote down another sketchbook. I had this idea for a restaurant called Trough, where like really rich people want to eat like a farm animal. So they go to this like restaurant where there's stuff painted on the wall, and they basically eat food out of a trough led by a farmer. So once I got to this point, there were some specific scenes I really wanted to do. So you might be able to see the blue line pencil under here. And so some of this becomes not so freewheeling and not so sketched out. I always tend to go back and forth with these things. Like I love drawing with pen and the spontaneity of it, but for something like this restaurant, I didn't feel like I could do it exactly the way I wanted to just in pen, just because it's kind of complicated. So I kind of went in with the pencil and tightened it up and then inked it with the G-nib. And you'll notice too that like the style changes a little bit. Like if you look at her name is Anais. If you look at the way she's drawn at the start with the micron, by the time she's drawn at the end with the pen, she looks significantly different, I think. And then I think that's fine. Some people might argue that that's, off character or off sheet or whatever we call it in animation. But I kind of like, things are allowed to sort of shift and change over time. And hopefully if the writing is strong enough and the story is strong enough, hopefully it's not too noticeable. It's a gradual shift. It's not a sudden shift. So hopefully it's obvious that this is the same person. So the Trough restaurant, and that's just sort of an opportunity for her to meet up with this other person. This is an old friend of hers who is a parent. And so a big part of this story that I wanted to work in here also is that parenting is a gig, like being a parent is a job. I'm not a parent very intentionally, but I'm interested in kind of like showing the ways in which adults can be, the way that adults can function and be adults without being parents, I think is a thing that's not really talked about very much. It's something that I'm kind of exploring a little bit more in this journal sketchbook that you can see a lot of these pages on our Patreon if you want to check that out. And I think I'm going to publish this as a book. I haven't totally decided yet, but you can read it on Patreon now if you want. And another double page spread. You can see again the blue pencil here. I think I just wanted something a little more refined. I think you can sort of tell the difference between something that's been sketched out and just sort of winged it. So she's back to her figure drawing job here, and then she's still kind of sleeping with the band members and watching their shows, and the band members have a kid that they're like all the kids' parent, and I was really happy with how this spread turned out. I think this was a nice way for me to show time passing. So here's the coffee guy, and his beard's getting longer. I was really happy with how that turned out. And then it ends on a cliffhanger, which I'm not going to show here. So if you do want to read it, go for it. That's up to you. So I was really happy with how this turned out. I think, so after I finish ATP, I'm going to do gigs part 2. I think I'm going to do it exactly the same way. I have a few ideas of what it will look like, but I finished this the first printing of this was in March of 2021, and my thoughts and feelings on what I want the story to be have changed pretty significantly since before then. So who knows what's going to happen in that one. And I just really liked adding this sketchbook thing in the back, since this is sort of meant to feel like documentarian in some way, or that it's sort of going with the time that it's happening. I just threw in a bunch of other drawings in the back that I had been doing in my actual sketchbook before this book. Just working some stuff out. But yeah, anyway, so I'm really happy, really proud of this book. It's something I like to talk about. It's full of a lot of ideas that I think about very often, and working in this sort of linear single object as opposed to having a bunch of loose pages was a nice way to kind of condense a bunch of different ideas into one solid thing. And now I have the whole book right here, so I don't know, could be a collector's object someday, who knows. Yeah, so if you want to get this book, I'll put the link in the description. And we will be, let's see, what are we touring soon? Nick will be at CXC by himself. And we'll both be at PCX in October. We'll both be at SPX in September. We'll both be at New York Comic Con for the first time ever also in October. So if you're in the East Coast area or in Ohio, come say what up. We also have some new stickers. Nick's making new stickers too, so we get a bunch of things ready to roll. All right, that's it. Toodly doodly.